Hello students, today we will be studying the 7th chapter from the Moments, which is the supplementary reader in English for class 9th. The name of the chapter is The Last Leaf and its author is O. Henry. About the author. O. Henry was an American short story writer. His real name was William Sidney Potter. He was born on the 11th of September 1862 and died on the 5th of June 1910. After wandering across different professions and activities, from pharmacy to drafting, journalism and banking, he finally found his calling as a short story writer. He has left us a great legacy of short stories to enjoy. Henry's rich canon of work reflected his wide range of experiences. His trademark is his witty, plot-twisting endings and his warm characterization of the awkward and difficult situations and the creative ways people find to resolve them. Some of his best-known work is contained in Cabbages and Kings. His stories are known for their surprise endings, and The Last Leaf is no exception to this. This story, The Last Leaf, revolves around three artists, Johnsy, Sue and Behrman. The Last Leaf is actually a painted ivy leaf by the artist Behrman. It was so realistically painted that it was misunderstood to be a real leaf. Throughout the whole story, the last ivy leaf remains the central idea around which the story revolves. In the earlier part of the story, it is associated with Johnsy's ailment and depression, but as the story moves on, it becomes the last hope of survival of Johnsy. It then conveys the message of hope, courage and optimism. Thus, the last leaf now arouses in Johnsy the desire to live, which she had earlier lost. It is thus responsible for saving her life. Furthermore, the last leaf also fulfills Behrman's lifelong desire to paint a masterpiece. This masterpiece turns out to be his last piece of art. Thus, the title of the story, which is The Last Leaf, is appropriate. Message of the story. The Last Leaf conveys a message of hope, optimism and courage. It tells us how hope can be ignited in someone's life. It gives us a message to have a positive attitude or outlook in life. It was in fact the lack of this positive attitude in Johnsy which was preventing her from getting over her depression and illness. The Last Leaf is also a story of sacrifice, as is seen in the case of the character Behrman. Behrman sacrifices his life just to ignite in Johnsy the hope to live. He painted the last ivy leaf on the wall so realistically that it was misunderstood to be a real leaf. In doing so, Behrman too fulfilled his lifelong dream of painting a masterpiece in the form of the last leaf. Theme of the story. This story is based on the theme that life is precious and that one should never lose the faith and hope to live. We all come across many challenges in life and they should be overcome by fighting back in high spirits. This story also reveals the fact that depression can turn into a disaster even though the situation is not so bad or challenging. We can also say that this story brings into light the fact that devoted friendship can help one in sailing through times of crisis. Now, let's discuss in brief the main characters of this story. There are three main characters in the story: Sue, Johnsey, and Behrman. Sue and Johnsey are young artists living together in a flat, and Behrman, who is a 60-year-old painter, lives on the ground floor of the house where Sue and Johnsey live. Behrman has a lifelong dream to paint a masterpiece. Johnsey is ill with pneumonia and has a fancy idea that she would die once the last leaf on the ivy creeper would fall. She is depressed and has lost the hope and the will to live. Sue, on the other hand, tries her best to make her friend Johnsey get over her depression and illness. She is a true friend, and when she saw that Johnsey would not listen to her, she sought the help of Behrman to resolve this issue. Now let's discuss the summary of the story, The Last Leaf. Sue and Johnsey are two young artists who share a small flat on the third story of an old house in the Greenwich Village area of New York. It is the month of November and Johnsey is suffering from pneumonia. Lying in bed, she would be constantly gazing out of the window. She seemed to have given up the hope to recover. Sue, her friend, was worried as the doctor's medicines too did not seem to have any positive effect on her sickness. She tried her best to make Johnsey take an interest in the things around her by talking to her about clothes and fashion, but all her efforts to do so were all in vain. One day, while Sue was painting in Johnsey's room and whistling along just to take Johnsey's mind off her illness, she heard Johnsey whispering something constantly. On coming closer to Johnsey's bed, she heard Johnsey counting backwards: 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Johnsey was looking out of the window and was counting the leaves being shed by the ivy creeper on the brick wall opposite to their window. A strong wind was blowing outside and the leaves of the ivy creeper were falling one by one. When asked by Sue, Johnsey tells her that only 5 leaves were now left on the creeper and that when the last leaf falls, she too will die. These negative thoughts had worsened Johnsey's illness, and thus the medicines too were not showing any positive results. The doctor informed Sue that Johnsey's chance of survival is dependent on her hope and desire to survive. Children, the word last in the title, The Last Leaf, reflects the main idea of the story, which is the last breath of Johnsey. At this stage of the story, we are introduced to Behrman, an old artist who lives in the lower portion of the same building as the two young artists. He has a desire to paint a masterpiece. Sue calls for him as she wants him to pose for a piece of painting she is working on. She confides in him about her friend Johnsey's ailment and also tells him that Johnsey is convinced that she would die as soon as the last leaf of the ivy creeper will fall. Behrman finds this thought ridiculous. He goes with Sue to Johnsey's room to visit her, but finds her sleeping. Then peeping through the window of the room, he notices that only one single leaf is left on the creeper. It was raining very heavily outside, and a very cold strong wind was blowing. He understood that the leaf left on the creeper would not be able to withstand such harsh conditions and would ultimately be shed off from the creeper during the night. But without saying a word, Behrman goes back to his room. The next morning, when Johnsy woke up, she asked Sue in a very feeble voice to draw the curtain of her window. Sue very reluctantly did so. She feared Johnsy's reaction as she was sure that the last leaf on the creeper must have definitely fallen off. But to her surprise, the leaf was still on the creeper. It looked green and healthy. In spite of the storm and the fierce winds, it had not fallen off. Johnsy was happy and relieved to see the last leaf still on the creeper. This aroused a new hope in Johnsy to live. Hour after hour, she would peep out of the window to find the leaf still there. She becomes optimistic and hope for survival arises in her. She says that the last leaf on the creeper had taught her the lesson of hope. After examining her, the doctor tells Sue that as Johnsy now has the will to live, she will recover soon. He also tells her that Behrman had taken ill last night and was suffering from pneumonia and that there was no hope for his recovery. The next morning, Sue sits by Johnsy's side, takes her hand in hers and tells her that Mr. Behrman had died of pneumonia. She further tells her that Behrman had painted the leaf on the wall when the last leaf fell. He had gone out in the snow and rain in order to paint the leaf. This he had done to ignite hope in Johnsy to live, but he caught pneumonia and died. The leaf on the creeper was actually the dream masterpiece painted by Behrman. It was so realistic that all had misunderstood it as a real leaf. With this, children, we come to the end of this inspirational story with a deep message of courage, hope, and optimism in life. Hope you all have understood it and enjoyed listening to it. Thank you.